Hey everybody, this is Dr. Aline Potvin. Sorry, I hopped on a little late. Had some issues with wireless. I'm traveling right now. I'll be back in Maine on Monday, but wanted to run this first episode out here anyway. And I'm really excited to get started with this broadcast. If any of you haven't had a chance to watch the introductory video that I put out for it, the Wellness Ed Sunday broadcast, the purpose for it is that, as a naturopathic doctor, I have people that come in all the time for a variety of chronic health issues. And we spend a lot of time dissecting, some of the nitty gritty of their health issues. And a lot of that stuff is, on the physical plane. And we talk about a lot of uncomfortable things. Most people aren't super excited about, talking about bodily functions and all that good stuff. But we have to really get to the core of their issue. But what I think a lot of people don't expect when they come and work with me is that inevitably there are things that will come up as they're making lifestyle changes, or even as they encounter new health issues that can be completely unexpected, particularly emotionally with regards to their relationships. And it's so common, it's so incredibly common. And what I wanted this broadcast to be, and what I hope it'll be, is a chance to really put some of those questions out there that people have for me, the things that really, really make a huge difference in whether or not they can make certain changes. We get super gung-ho in the wellness world about making lifestyle change, and oftentimes are disregarding the real challenges and obstacles that people encounter. So, again, this is a chance for us to discuss it, because I know that for every person that comes through my door that has these kinds of questions, there's, hundreds more out there that have the same question. And so the way I want to set up these Sunday broadcasts is by reading a question or reading a letter that comes up from people in the practice, and answer that question to the best of my ability. I laid it out in my blog that, I do a lot of counseling in my practice. I'm not a licensed therapist, but that is a huge part of what I do. So I'm going to answer, or provide, ideas on how to manage it that I've found to be really helpful for patients in my practice. And the idea is that will be useful tools that people can share with other people if they'd like. So I'm going to answer those questions and then offer some exercises too for, a broader audience that you can implement, simple changes that you can implement into your week. So I want this also to be a really nice kickoff to your week as well. And sometimes when we have those little reminders, those little pokes at the beginning of the week, it can really make the difference, especially if it's covering an issue that maybe is in the back of our brain on a regular basis anyway, and we don't exactly know who to speak to about it. So, so I'm going to start off by reading a letter with a question about something that really comes up often in practice. And the letter goes like this. Dear Dr. Potvin, I recently got in to see a functional medicine doctor, and we've established a protocol that will mean big changes, but I know that I'm long overdue. I have 2 children that are now old enough to be independent, so I've gone back to work. And when I got back to work, it felt like I was hopping from one foot to the next, and burnout was really starting to build. In the month that I've worked with my doctor, with my functional medicine doctor, I've already started to see some gradual changes in that burnt feeling. So that's good. Awesome. While I anticipated some challenges in integrating diet changes and fitness into my already hectic lifestyle, there's one thing that I didn't expect. I didn't expect my husband's reaction, if you can call it that. He makes fun of the new foods. He laughs at me when I'm doing my new workouts at home. He's usually a joker, and I typically wouldn't think anything of it, but there is such consistency and passive aggressiveness in his words that I'm not sure. He also brings up the additional cost of some of our new foods, which is a sore spot for me as I've only just gotten back into the workforce. He's been so supportive of me in other ways that I'm completely taken aback by this. I should be overjoyed with the progress I'm seeing already, but there's this lingering cloud of guilt. Some days it makes me question some of the changes I'm making, even though I know this is the best thing I could be doing for myself right now. How do I address this unexpected behavior? Signed, gluten-free and guilty. That's a good name. Well, gluten-free and guilty. First of all, I want to congratulate you for choosing to prioritize your self-care, especially with everything that you have on your plate. A lot of people wouldn't realize what a vulnerable position you're in right now. As you go through your lifestyle changes and layers of the onion start to fall off, you are going to be opening up in so many different ways. And so that vulnerability that you're feeling right now is a process that could continue. But the ripple effect of that vulnerability is something that your family and your friends may not be fully prepared for, And in fact, sometimes in intimate relationships, this can rock their world enough that they end up actually reacting instead of responding in a fully supportive way. And it's surprisingly common. I actually see it quite a bit. But the reality is that our social spheres, our friends, our friendships, and our relationships are some of our largest determinants of health. And studies even show that when we do not have social spheres that are aligned with some of the healthier things we need to do, that can have a huge impact on our overall health over time. So it's really important that your partner and the rest of your family and friends are on board with you. My suspicion is, gluten-free and guilty, that your husband's unexpected behavior and statements about money in particular are not about the money at all. And I think that you probably know that as well. There's a much deeper issue on his part that's popping up. And, there's a few options that depend really entirely on what kind of relationship you two already have. But given that you're sensing resentment from your husband, if your communication with him was already really strong before, really the first option would be to simply state your observations and ask him about it. It sounds like, I didn't get a lot of information, but it sounds like, he was fairly supportive of you in a lot of ways before. So that may just be part of what needs to happen. Sometimes partners feel like they're being left in the dust when others start to make healthier changes. And especially if the other one is starting to get back some of that energy and vigor that perhaps they wish that they had, there can be a little bit of resentment and jealousy there. And you may need to again, note your observations and ask him about it. Sometimes partners also feel like they're being lassoed into changes that they themselves are not actually ready to make. And they can feel threatened by that as well. And sometimes in these cases, this is where an invite can be helpful from you. If it feels like there is a choice in communal activities like, meals, it may be easier for them to quote unquote digest the changes. But my only caution to you in that is to avoid trying to justify your new routines or to put too much effort into accommodating everybody's whims. Probably the most common thing that I see is when women end up having to prepare 3 different meals for their family. And quite frankly, if you're here working with this doctor trying to move past burnout, that's not going to help your cause. So an invite, even just a simple invite, can make a huge difference between partners because it helps them feel included. But again, it's important to not, feel like you have to justify all of your new routines that are really what's best for you. So the best you can do is give a sincere invite, and perhaps a couple of options for participation, and then in the end, it's up to him. Sometimes what I actually do in my practice is, if the spouse and the patient are completely comfortable with this, I actually ask both of them to come in when I'm discussing treatment plan, treatment options, when I'm laying that all out and all the details that are around it. I actually have them both come in for that visit. And this can make a really huge difference, because when an intimate partner knows exactly why a recommendation is being made, it can ease the process for them and kind of get them on board with the details of your plan. And sometimes it even gets them kind of excited about making some of those changes for themselves. And so if you're comfy with that, and your provider, your functional medicine doctor, is comfortable with that, that could actually be a very, very valuable step to take. But oftentimes, in my practice, in that initial consultation, I actually, invite them both in, because then they get, familiar with me, they get familiar with the rationale behind all sorts of lifestyle changes, and it's an educational opportunity for everybody involved. So, not a bad idea at all if you're comfortable with it. Another truth, and this is, another tricky part about when one partner decides to make some changes and the other doesn't, is that when one of the partners is making individual change, it can put a big magnifying glass on issues within the relationship itself. And it could be valuable for you to add either, a couples counselor or an individual counselor as part of the team. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And while I don't, again, know much about your husband, I hope that that's something that he would be open to. And really all that you can do, if you've had strong support from him before in a lot of other realms, is to ask, even though I know that that's not the easiest thing to do. It's really a fine balance, gluten-free and guilty, because your moving forward should never be sabotaged by those that are closest to you. And the hardest part of making change can be practicing that art of rebuilding and fortifying your own boundaries. And you're truly not responsible for their reactions, nor should you take that onto yourself. And even though, the guilt that you're feeling right now is totally normal, I see it all the time, particularly with women, but again, you're truly not responsible for their reactions. One thing that I highly recommend to anyone that's experiencing what you're feeling is to rebuild those boundaries by practicing what I call the art of choice and saying no on a daily basis. And I find that mothers in particular tend to put their needs on the back burner, and they can actually get out of practice of how to exercise their own choice. So here's actually one exercise that I would have. Oh, it looked like it blipped out of it. I think that everyone can still see me. Sorry, I got a little wireless notification. But like I was saying, an exercise that you can try to help rebuild those boundaries is, for example, let's say you don't like what's playing on the radio, and typically you'd suffer through it because, it's really not that bad a song, but you really don't like it. It's not something you particularly enjoy. My suggestion to you is to just change the station. You're reading a book, but you're 2 chapters in and it's super boring and you're not sure if you really want to read the rest, but you feel bad about, not continuing to the rest of the book. Just put it aside. You don't want to go to that work barbecue that everyone's talking about? Don't go. It sounds super silly. I mean, they sound like very simple things. But it's in practicing those really small things on a daily basis that can help us feel more solid in our choices on a day-to-day basis. And what it can also do is help us deflect behaviors from others that may try to dissolve our choices, right? So in this case, if you're feeling stronger in just making those day-to-day yes-no choices, it can galvanize you in a way for some of the larger feelings that you, or resentments that may be coming your way, and it won't bother you quite so much. So to wrap it up, you can have a frank conversation with him. You can invite him to participate. You can employ others to mediate or support the both of you. But just know that you're not responsible for his dissatisfaction, truly. And I encourage you to just keep doing your thing, really. I mean, if you're already seeing some results, keep going. You 100% deserve, that energy and that restoration. So those are my tips for gluten-free and guilty. But for everyone out there that's listening that wants to try, these are some tips that everyone can give a go this week. So try exercising that art of saying no, like I was saying before. Big or small, it usually helps by, building up to some of the bigger stuff. But if you can find one or two things this week that you normally would just kind of, suffer through, but it's really not going to ruin the world if you don't do it, choose to not do it. That, practicing saying no in a little way can really, again, galvanize you for those larger moments where you kind of have to stand up to people trying to dissolve your choice, your ability to make choice. And I didn't really mention this to gluten-free and guilty before, but, if you notice that your social sphere is not ideal for you it's not being as supportive as you need through a process of change, keep your eyes peeled for new tribe members. Sometimes your nearest circle just can't, for whatever reason, be supportive of you. And I know, here in Maine, where I practice, it's a little bit trickier because people are living in rural spaces, it's socially isolating, and it's hard to find tribe members. So I find that there's actually a lot of online communities that can be really great. Facebook has a lot of space and venues for people trying to make lifestyle changes, can make a huge difference. So what I'll actually do probably is post a few links of spaces that I found to be really cool. That can be a good way for you to, rebuild your tribe. Because again, even the research shows that how successful people are in making lifestyle changes, it is determined largely by their social sphere. So I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight for this first, question and answer session. And I hope that you're able to, take something away from the answer that I provided to our writer. And if you have any questions at all, I highly recommend you check out, I'm going to actually put the link to my blog in the comments below this video. You can scope it out, see how you would send in a question to me. But I really want this to be a regular broadcast to help people, again, address those things that are oftentimes obstacles to whether or not we're successful with health changes or when we meet health challenges, but we don't usually talk about them. And if you want any additional health information or information about future events, I'm going to put the link to my website below. You can also sign up for my email list there, and you're more than welcome to do that. And next week, absolutely feel free to tune in. It's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. And next week, we're actually going to talk about a topic that comes up all the time in practice, and that's weight bias in healthcare and how that can really keep people from seeking out care. So feel free to share this video with anybody that you think would be interested in it, or that it might resonate with them, or it's something that they talk about with you. Hopefully, any sort of insight I gave today will be helpful to them. But thanks again for tuning in, everybody, and I'll see you all next week.